guys, and you know, I spoke earlier on about the indie chart, the Radio 1 thing. You made #7 on that with End of the Line. You must have been thrilled with that.
Absolutely delighted, yeah. Obviously, it was our first single since we got signed. We got signed our first record deal in April with Halo Records, and released our first single in June called End of the Line, and we're really pleased, obviously, as a first single to get at #7 on the Radio 1 indie chart with Joe Wiley. Absolutely delighted, yeah, it was really good, really pleased.
Yeah. And how have things changed since you signed a record deal? How have things changed, Chris?
It's quite a bit more hectic, to be honest. Yeah, things have got really full on. Yeah, I mean, you gig sort of locally, and we started gigging in London more, which is where we got actually sort of seen by a number of labels. But there's just you sort of find out as you go along. You just sort of thrown at the deep end and find out a lot more about this industry, that it's not just, you know, you have more to think about than just arranging gigs in your local town, you know.
Reverend's been talking about packing it in, Toby was telling me this morning, because he's realised that the music industry actually is just all about making money, but you know, there's still scope for some creativity, isn't there, within the music industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's odd because to comment on that much, because you don't know what the deal is with how much say they have with their label, and you know, a lot of bigger labels tend to have a lot more control over what artists do, and you don't have as much sort of creative input. I mean, we're really chuffed with sort of how Mike and Halo, who are basically our sort of platform, our label, have sort of give us a lot of sort of input, you know, take a lot of things we say into account. And yeah,
I second that, definitely.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, to you boys, I mean, I've seen you live, and that's important to you because you're a creative bunch of fellas, and actually anyone worth their salt is going to see that and realise that it kind of let you get on with that side of the business, and it's their job to go away and plug and to.
That's the key. That's the key. I mean, in a band, you know, when you get to the stage of getting a deal, you want to concentrate then on the songs, you know, and concentrate on writing, playing live, all that side of it. That's what you want to do, and that's key to being successful. I think being able to concentrate on that, and Halo have given us that opportunity.
It's an exciting time to be a band in Sheffield, isn't it? I always say, I mean, I grew up very much through the Manchester years, you know, I was a boy of Manchester through those years. I survived it with my mate, just about. But I get the same kind of vibe and the same kind of feeling, the same kind of energy in Sheffield now. Yeah. And I'm not alone in sensing that, am I?
No, not at all. The sort of platform that's gone through, I mean, we've always had, I suppose we started, you know, there's sort of bands in the 80s that were sort of big but never sort of seemed to be quite a few at one time. So, you know, on the back of the old sort of Arctic Monkeys, I suppose, initially really drawing attention as like a bit of a hotbed, if you like, Sheffield. Yeah, there's been people sort of like Reverend, Little Man Tate, you know, obviously we want to follow in that. We've not got a similar sound, but I don't think that's the point. It's just sort of drawing attention to a range of music that, you know, can be offered from Sheffield, and people sort of look to that now.
I mean, you talked about the 80s, and some of those bands are back, and for the first time this year we're going to get to see Heaven 17, ABC and Human League on the same stage, you know, the Steel City tour. Can you imagine that in 20 years' time, me sat here, I'll be a bad-tempered beggar by then, but sat here saying for the first time on one stage, Arctic Monkeys, Reverend and CRAINE, you know, it's not impossible to visualise that.
Yeah, it's definitely a good time at the moment. I mean, you speak about the 80s, I mean, some of our influences do come from that sort of era, and the early 90s as well, you know what I mean? A lot of it, looking at our influences, sort of like U2, you know, Scott, keyboard player, there's a lot of our songwriting as well. He's big on sort of Duran, Fleetwood Mac, earlier than that, Floyd, you know. So we actually look for our influences. A lot of it's actually not current as well, it's actually in the past, and also a bit nearer as well with the Killers and people like that. So it's quite varied.
So that was the thing that really struck me when we caught up backstage at the Roller Valley thing, was that actually the influences are really eclectic. I don't think I've ever come across a band that's influenced by, you know, the kind of 90s sound of maybe James, and Floyd and Duran, you know, it's a real
bit of a mix.
It is a real soup, isn't it?
It's a melting pot, yeah.
There's some great bands there. Some great bands in those times, weren't there? Absolutely brilliant.
It's when you said to us, try and describe your sound with someone on the edge. It's you can only really try and describe your mix of influences, because it's impossible to say some sort of very niche description or something.
So, Steve, I compare your voice quite often. You'll have heard me say this, sort of in between Tim Booth from James and Andy McCluskey from OMD. You're kind of in the middle. How does that make you feel when you hear that comparison?
It's nice, thanks very much. Yeah, it's a compliment. I'm a big fan of both those. I do like both of their sounds, and I like both of those vocalists. So that's nice to hear. Thanks very much. Yeah.
You're going to sing something live for us in a bit as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Brilliant. Okay, stay with us. It's today's BBC Radio Sheffield. Sheffield band CRAINE are my guests in the studio. We'll chat some more with them, and Chris and Steve will play for us live in just a minute as well. Steve White is in for Roni today. Today's BBC Radio Sheffield from midday today. Steve's going to be talking healthcare with pharmacist Ravi Mohan, and his guest of the day, a man who knows all about the murky gangland of